In at the number 10 spot, we have good teenagers, take off your clothes, and that was a phrase said in the popular movie Aladdin. What? So in the scene, Aladdin and the magic carpet fly up to Jasmine's balcony, only to find Jasmine's tiger Raja was up there. You can hear a little subtle voice in the background that supposedly says, "Good teenagers, take off your clothes." In order to hear this, you actually have to turn up your TV really loud. Disney released a statement saying, in the movie Aladdin, it doesn't actually say that. What? What are you guys hearing? It actually says, "Come on, good kitty, take off and go." The rumor started in 1993 when Aladdin was released to VHS. And at the number 9 spot, the word sex is spelled out in the Lion King movie. A 4-year-old boy from New York actually spotted this image while he was watching the movie. So just around halfway through the movie, there was a cloud of dust that forms when Simba, Pumbaa, and Timon were gazing into the stars while on a cliff. If you actually watch carefully, the newly formed dust appears to spell out SEX. Of course, Disney had a rebuttal, and they said that the image actually spells SFX, and there's not that line on that E. It was inserted by the special effects group, so it's supposed to spell like special effects abbreviated. Things are looking up into the number 8 spot. Well, I'm talking about the minister's erection in The Little Mermaid. So during Ursula's wedding scene, you can notice something protruding from the minister's pelvic region. And it looks like someone is more excited about this wedding than Ursula. Although it does look like an erection, if you look at this scene from a different angle, it's the minister's knee, and it's just badly positioned. Okay, so in at number 7, it's gonna have you questioning your eyesight, because I'm talking about the movie poster of The Lion King. So back in 2002, The Lion King was re-released in theaters for limited time, and this is a popular movie poster from it. At first glance, the poster seems innocent, right? It has Simba on the cover, but if you look closely, it looks like a semi-naked girl wearing what appears to be a thong. This is either Disney being very clever, or we just have too many people in the world with dirty minds. But now I probably just ruined your guys' childhood, because you're always gonna see that image, and I'm sorry. Okay, so The Little Mermaid makes a second appearance on this list, and they come into number 6. I mean, we're talking about the damn Little Mermaid here, and they're making this list twice. And that's because a penis appears to be on the front cover of the VHS movie. So on the cover of the VHS, it seems that one of the castle's tips resembles a penis. And because of this, the castle is often referred to as the phallic palace. And phallic is like another term for penis. It was reported that an angry artist tried to like sneak this image in there, and this is to get revenge because he was gonna get laid off. However, on the newly released version of The Little Mermaid, you don't see this image appear on the cover. Okay, so in at the number 5 spot, we have the naked person that appeared in The Rescuers. During this scene when Bernard and Bianca are riding around the city in a sardine tin, if you pay attention, you'll notice a naked woman through a window in the background. Disney actually made this subliminal message public, and they claim that she was put into the film during the post-production. On January 8th of 1999, Disney decided to recall 3.4 million copies of the 1977 animated movie. Well, if you thought things couldn't get any more shocking, well, I'm sorry to say it does, and this next one comes into number. We have more penis imagery, and this time in the Hercules. So after Hercules punches out the River Guardian monster, a horseshoe hits him right on the forehead, which causes him an awkward looking bump to grow out of his head. It eventually grew into a penis shape, including morphing his eyebrows into a set of testicles. Okay, this next image happens in Alice in Wonderland, and this comes into number 3. So I think we can all clearly see what this rabbit hole looks like. And I'm not sure why Disney feels the need to insert all these sexual innuendos in children's movies. Not only is this image seen in the film, a lot of people say that Alice in Wonderland has a lot of drug references such as cocaine, speed, LSD, nitrous oxide, crystal meth, MDMA, marijuana, mushrooms, opium, and nicotine. I'm not really sure what's happening in this movie, but I think Alice needs some help, because that woman takes a whole lot of drugs. Okay, so Mickey Mouse makes an entrance into number 2, and that's because he's caught holding a penis. This image is an internet favorite. Minnie's dress makes a subliminal penis shape in Mickey's hand, which confirms a lot of people's beliefs that Disney sexualizes their content and displays it for a vulnerable audience. Okay, so we've all made it to the moment you guys have all been waiting for. We're in at number 1. But quickly, let's recap everything we've had. We've had The Little Mermaid and all the penises. We've heard Aladdin tell teenagers to take off their clothes. We've seen the sex words in clouds, a naked woman in The Rescuers. Alice might be using a whole lot of drugs. But in at number 1, things get a whole lot worse. And we're talking about the movie The Monsters Inc. that did really good in the movie theaters and was seen by a lot of people. So what are we talking about? Well, this graphic image, which was allegedly seen in the final scenes of of the Monsters Inc., it depicts what appears to be a children's drawing of two people in a compromising position. This image has been circulated all over the internet, and it's left people wondering if this image is real or if it's just a hoax. So I looked into it a little bit more, and it actually turned out that this isn't the image used in the movie. Someone photoshopped this really well and was able to like spread this rumor. And that's the reason why it comes into this list in at number 1, because it even fooled me. However, it was confirmed that animators working on the film created this image as a joke, so this was created by someone who worked on the movie. Disney just knows how to pick them.
Number 10, Drake and Josh, Josh is gone. We're actually going to kick off this list with a show that I have never seen before. Really for 2 reasons. This show was a little after my time. By the time this show came out, I had learned what HBO was. And when things like The Sopranos are on TV, Drake and Josh just doesn't really cut it. And 2, when I was younger, I didn't really want to watch shows with real people in them. They just seemed boring to me. Why would I watch a show about 2 brothers bickering when Moses was splitting the Red Sea with a Beyblade? Much better television. But in the episode Josh is Gone, Drake and Josh have a major falling out that ruins their friendship. And throughout the episode, we see Drake's life unravel until he reaches a major breaking point. At the end of the episode, they hang out again, but the friendship isn't entirely repaired. The whole episode kind of has this dark underlying tone that sometimes you lose your friends, and in real life, these guys aren't even friends anymore. Number 9, Adventure Time Apocalypse. Now this one doesn't cover a specific episode because there are so many episodes in Adventure Time that reference the world that existed before the Candy Kingdom.
Hey, good morning. I made you breakfast. It's mostly pine needles and deer guts.
Oh, you're even worse.
Basically, it seems like there was a full contemporary metropolis that was very similar to our world, but there was a massive disaster. Kinda like that gigantic asteroid that barely missed the Earth last week. Yeah, that one that was the size of the Statue of Liberty that would have wiped out an entire continent. If you don't know about that, give it a quick Google search. It'll remind you that nothing matters. But back to Adventure Time. Throughout the show, we get flashbacks to what the world used to be like, and we even get exposed to what happened to all the people. It seems like everyone got turned into some sort of zombie-like creature with green goo oozing out of their faces. Now on to number 8. We got Rocco Goes to Hell. Rocco's modern life was great. You had a well-dressed wallaby who was best friends with a cow, and the two would go on some pretty strange adventures together. But in one episode, Rocco Goes to Heck, we see the show take a pretty dark turn. Rocco's best friend Heifer chokes to death and ends up in hell. Let's just start there. Having your friend choke to death in front of you is a pretty horrible thing to see. You would have to spend plenty of paychecks on therapy to have that one scrubbed from your brain. Then we go to after Heifer dies and is inside hell, which in the show is named Heck for the younger viewers. Once Heifer arrives in the burning underworld, we get to meet Peaches, who is the Rocco's modern life version of the devil. Peaches then starts to do what I assume the devil does best, which is, of course, torture. This then leads us to watching Heifer going through all sorts of strange torments. I think letting kids know that they could be thrown into hell at any moment is a little bit much to take on. Let them find out they're going straight to hell like the rest of us. Number 7, the Danny Phantom opening credits. Having ghost powers is a great original concept. We don't really know what ghosts are or even if they exist, so you can play around with it as much as you want. And he had a very diverse group of friends in the show. The show was really ahead of its time. But what if the backbone of the show, the accident that gave Danny his ghost powers, didn't actually happen?
When it didn't quite work, his folks they just quit. Then Danny took a look inside of it. There was a great big flash, everything just changed. His molecules got all rearranged.
Well, the accident happened, but instead of giving him ghost powers, it sent him blasted into a coma, and all the crazy adventures he goes on are just figments of his imagination in a coma state. There have been cases of people in comas where they can hear what's going on around them. So maybe Danny Fenton is in a coma and all the different characters that are around him are the doctors, nurses, and visitors that are coming in to see him. Maybe the reason he goes between ghost and human form is because he's constantly on the edge of life and death. Number 6, episode 29 of The Amanda Show. The Amanda Show was one of the best kids sketch shows of all time. It set up Amanda Bynes to be one of the biggest comedy stars ever. But then of course her life took a turn for the wild side and she started saying things about how she wanted to bang Drake. Then she got those permanent dimple piercings, you know, those ones that make you look like you never say no to bathroom drugs. Well, before all this went down, her show had an episode with themes that were a little bit more on the risky side. In episode 29 of of the Amanda Show, it starts out with an Italian man who explodes out of nowhere. Then later in the episode, it's followed by a sketch with a family known as the Luckless. They are so unlucky that nothing lucky ever happens to them. This sketch ends with a meteor smashing into the Luckless's home and destroying it. Now on their own, these sketches aren't too bad, but if you wrap in the fact that this episode aired right before 9/11, then you can see why it was taken off the air. A man blowing himself up and a flying object destroying a building would have for sure been in bad taste. And the underlying theme that people might think is there is that it's all conspiracy theory and the Amanda Show people were trying to tell us what was gonna happen. Probably not, but who knows. Number 5. Steve does drugs. Blue's Clues. By the time Blue's Clues came out, I was already too old. The anime era had grabbed me, and I wasn't some juvenile kid anymore watching baby shows. I was an angsty preteen who would cry if he misplaced one of his shiny Pokemon cards. Much more mature. But I do know that the show is about a guy walking around his house talking to inanimate objects trying to find clues. He's doing this because it's a fun way to teach kids. Or is the dark message behind the show that Steve is a former detective who worked a case so disturbing that it broke him mentally? Now he spends his days dosing himself with enough drugs to hallucinate and forget the case that tore him down. The detective theory explains why a grown man is so interested in clues, and the drugs explain why he can talk to salt shakers. Either that or he has the worst superpower of all time. I would like to see a dark noir version of Blue's Clues where Steve is trying to solve the murder of a young girl and he has to beat answers out of a fire hydrant. That would be interesting. Number 4 is SpongeBob dying for pie. So how did all the characters in the SpongeBob universe come to be sentient beings with complex emotions and an entire society similar to our own? Is it all made up, or is it because they're sea creatures that got blasted with nukes and now they all got mutated? That's how life starts, right? You blast things with nuclear energy and then everyone gets smarter. Well, the theory is that the underwater world of Bikini Bottom got all of its super intelligent life forms from nuclear bomb testing. This theory is kind of backed up by the episode Dying for Pie, where SpongeBob has a pie with a bomb in it, and when it goes off, it's a nuclear level explosion.
I was saving it in my pocket for us to share. Let's eat. Oops.
This would mean that the people in Bikini Bottom have access to nukes and could be the next global superpower. You don't just get nukes out of nowhere. Maybe they got access to nukes from a failed nuclear test where the bomb didn't go off. They then took it and made themselves someone to be respected at the next UN meeting. Number 3, iCarly. The Nora Dershlet episodes. This is another show that I've never seen before, guys, but I'm pretty sure I get what the show is about. Some girl has some sort of web show and it's kind of famous and she's got a whole bunch of zany friends and her parents are probably pretty goofy too. Basically the same as every other kid's show, but it's about an internet celebrity. Well, one episode dove into something that is actually a real risk for celebrities and influencers. Stalkers. People are willing to buy your old toothbrush off of eBay and stand too close to you when they talk. In the episode, a superfan, Nora Dershlet, kidnaps Carly and a few of her friends. She keeps them locked in her home. Where's this girl's parents? In the show it's very fun and playful and eventually they all escape in the most unlikely way. I swear I could write kids shows blackout drunk. But what's freaky about this stuff is that it happens all of the time, especially now with everyone and their dog becoming some sort of influencer. People are constantly being stalked, attacked, and sometimes even killed. Think about that before you link your location in your next Instagram post. Number 2, Mr. Dink from Doug is a predator. So on the first day of Doug moving into his new neighborhood, he meets his neighbor Mr. Dink. And what's the first thing that Mr. Dink does to the 11-year-old boy that he just met?
Do you have time to watch the official Welcome to Bluffington video? It's short and informative.
Well, my family's starving and I really...
Well, of course you do.
Well, he invites him in to watch a movie all by himself. My god, dude, this is wrong on so many levels. In later episodes, Mr. Dink becomes Doug's Boy Scout leader, which is basically a child molester's dream job. And of course his name is Mr. Dink. How many more warnings do you need? Number 1, Degrassi. Holy! Degrassi touches on so much at one school. We have teen pregnancies, fights, sexual assaults. Even Drake gets shot. The dude gets shot and put into a wheelchair. My school was nothing like this. People were all cool with each other, even the pregnant ones. There's too much going on in this show just to pick one episode, but all the hidden meanings are basically that growing up is super hard and you should always wear a condom.
At number 10. Disney was in a whole lot of hot water when their movie The Santa Claus included a reference that actually might be an adult hotline. There was a part of the movie where Tim Allen's character jokes about this number.
Neil's mom's number in case.
1-800-SPANK-ME. I know that number.
And a Merry Christmas to you too.
Well, kids actually decided to call that number, and I'm sure a lot of you guys are trying it right now. Well, they were pretty shocked when they found out that it was an operating sex hotline that charged callers by the minute. So needless to say, lots of kids racked up some pretty huge phone bills as a result of this huge mistake, and I can't believe something like that could actually happen. I mean, someone had to have known that this was an operating number. I refuse to believe that this is just an innocent mistake. Creeping on our list, and at number 9 we have Aladdin's naughty message.
Come on, good. Can you just take off?
Okay, I'm not sure. Did you guys catch that? Apparently Aladdin isn't as innocent as you might think. In the VHS version of the movie, you can actually hear him supposedly say, "Good teenagers, take off your clothes." Well, let me play that clip again for you guys.
Come on, good. Can you just take off?
Well, what do you guys think? You be the judge of that. The voice actor denied ever saying those lines. Well, in the script, he apparently said, "Come on, good kitty, take off and go." I'm going with the first one. I'm not going with this one, but I'm not sure what to believe. This seems super suspect to me, and maybe it was intentionally implanted. Mufasa's nose takes us over to number 8. Well, let's all examine this movie cover very closely. Alright, well, you guys are looking at it right now. Do you guys see anything a little bit unusual? How about if I make an outline for you guys? Seems pretty obvious now, doesn't it? I mean, who the heck drew this cover art? Someone with some repressed issues, apparently. Now, you know what? I can't unsee this image. I think my childhood is over, but wait, we're only at number 8, so I guess there's more childhood memories to kill. Great. With that all being said, and at number 7 we have The Unconscious Woman. Did you guys ever notice that Disney had a really creepy recurring theme in a lot of its movies? I'm specifically talking about the fact that in both Snow White and Sleeping Beauty, the princesses could only be woken up when they got kissed by a prince. Well, does anyone else see a problem with this? They are literally unconscious women who've never met any of these men before, but they were basically being violated. I mean, what the heck are we teaching our kids? I mean, Bill Cosby went to jail for this sort of thing, and we're now prompting this in Disney movies. This is actually so bizarre, so let's move on. Esmeralda's naked body in her fire dance brings us to number 6. I think Disney needs to start doing some background checks on their employees, because they have some pretty perverted people working in the art department. I mean, I can't even count on my hands. I mean, how many inappropriate things have slipped into Disney movies? And the next one is no exception. Well, take a look at this picture right here. You can clearly see that Esmeralda's body is highlighted and appears to be naked during her fire dance. In most of the dance sequence, it looks like she was clothed, but there are a ton of frames where it looks like she's actually naked. I just don't know what or who to believe anymore. I mean, my whole childhood, it was just one big lie, wasn't it? Alright, give up all your morals, and this takes us to number 5. There are a lot of life lessons that can be learned from watching movies, especially Disney movies. Well, maybe not. But then there are a bunch of harsh realities that are subliminally hidden in these same exact films. Disney basically taught us that if you want something badly, you should just throw away your morals in order to get it. Don't believe me? Well, I'm giving you some examples, I'm giving you some receipts. In The Little Mermaid, one of the worst lessons that was embedded into the film was when Ariel basically sold her soul to Ursula so she can get a pair of legs. She has no problems leaving her family, her friends, leaving her home, and losing her voice to chase the possibility of marrying a prince. The prince falls in love with her because of her looks, not her personality. So what is Disney trying to teach us here? What are they telling us? I mean, this is not okay. Next up, number 4, we have a naked lady poster. I kid you not, this is probably one of the most recognizable subliminal messages that has ever been found in a Disney movie. If you rewatch the VHS copy of The Rescuers, you will actually see one of the most inappropriate background images ever seen. It's not even a cartoon naked lady, it literally looks like an actual picture of a topless girl with her arms spread. Why is this even featured in the movie? It has no business being there. The overly excited minister tramples onto our list at number 3. Yeah, that's right. We're talking about The Little Mermaid once again. We can probably do a whole top 10 list on The Little Mermaid. But this subliminal message is even more creepy because it involves a priest. Okay, do you guys remember the scene where Ursula is tricking Prince Eric into marrying her? Well, apparently someone was extra excited at the ceremony and they decided to make an appearance. The original animator argues that it's just the priest's knee, but I'm gonna have to call them out on this one because that knee definitely didn't need to be there. Moving to number 2, we have the devil's dog hand signal. Apparently in a bunch of Disney movies, there are a ton of scenes where the characters are all doing this hand gesture. This is the devil's dog and it signifies the horn of the devil, and it is often associated with Satan worshippers. So are Disney employees just Satan followers, or is this a mistake that was overlooked by a bunch of people a bunch of times? And I'm not sure if I actually want to know the answer to that one. And now coming in at number 1, we have a Nazi symbol. This picture was taken from 101 Dalmatians, and as you can clearly see, there was a swastika on Purdy's back. And this isn't the first time that the animators used spots on the Dalmatian to convey a message, a hidden message. As you can see, there is a horseshoe on Lucky's back in the same picture. So obviously they are pretty adamant about placements of the spots, and it just seems like they've been put there on purpose. Apparently there are a lot of disgruntled employees working at Disney, and maybe this is just their way of lashing out.
Starting off this countdown, we have DuckTales Illuminati. In season 3, episode 13, in an episode of DuckTales titled Yuppie Ducks, fans notice something quite strange in the background of a scene. So in this episode, Scrooge gets a bad itch and has to go to a doctor. The doctor has some weird decorations in his office though. In the background, there's an eye chart, but the eye chart clearly reads, "Ask about Illuminati." It's not that subtle at all. And why is it that the animators decided to throw in that little subliminal message? Are they trying to tell us something? In our 9th spot, we have SpongeBob's TV. And if you guys are liking this video so far and you want to see more content like this, then make sure to give it a big thumbs up. Not gonna lie, SpongeBob is filled with dirty jokes. As kids watching the show, it often went over our heads. But if you go back and re-watch the episodes, chances are you'll understand what the writers were truly trying to convey. Take the scene of SpongeBob featured in the episode Your Shoes Untied. In this episode, SpongeBob forgets how to tie his shoes, but that's irrelevant. In one scene, SpongeBob turns on the TV and relaxes back in his chair. On the TV, we see Sea Anemone dancing back and forth. SpongeBob is clearly into this. Then Gary enters the room and he quickly switches the channel to a football game. And he's clearly embarrassed, implying that what he was originally watching was inappropriate. Gary caught him right in the middle of him watching a rated R program. In our 8th spot, we have the 3 Little Pigs. Disney is sick for including this in the show. So let's take a look at the 3 Little Pigs. In one scene, we see the pigs singing and dancing in one of their homes. But beside them in the back is a framed picture of sausages. And we all know that sausages are made out of pig. To make matters worse, the frame is labeled as father. So their father got turned into sausages and eaten. In another scene, we see another framed piece of meat artwork. This time, it's a ham leg, and it's also labeled father. So the 3 Little Pigs' father was killed, hacked up, and sold as different meat items. Disgusting. Moving on to number 7, we have Adventure Time. Adventure Time is just another one of those shows that is filled with inappropriate jokes. But there are 2 main episodes that I want to talk about today. The first one being the episode titled, What Have You Done? In this episode, the Ice King accidentally infects all of the Candy Kingdom with an ice plague. And so Princess Bubblegum looks back through her research book to see if she's got a cure for this. Well, as she is flipping through the book, we see a number written on the page, 531-8008. Look at this number in the mirror and it spells out boobs. It does. They also carefully place the dots in the numbers to represent, you know, come on, you get it. I don't have to say it. The next episode I'm going to be talking about is the one called Blank-Eyed Girl. Now this isn't as subtle as the last episode, but basically in this episode, Jake and Flynn are looking for the creepy stuff book. While exploring a shelf with many books, they come across one titled Butt Stuff. Again, I really don't need to explain this. Moving on at number 6, we have the Rugrats. Grandpa Lou from the Rugrats always creeped me out. And the next scene from the Rugrats proves that he's just as creepy as I always thought he was. So in one episode, we see Grandpa Lou babysitting Tommy and Chucky. He tells them that he rented a movie for them. He says, and I quote, "Let's get down to some real fun. I've rented you boys some movies." He then holds up a movie featuring the Reptar. And then he holds up the movie that he rented for himself. He then says, "But my personal favorite is Lonely Space Vixens." The movie that he's holding features a green-skinned female alien in a bikini. He then laughs and wiggles his eyebrows and says, "Now that's for after you go to bed." Ew! Ugh, I'm sorry, like that definitely wasn't necessary. Ugh, get that image out of my mind. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with Dexter's Lab. For this show, let's take a look at the episode titled Nuclear Confusion. In this episode, Dee Dee steals an important part to one of Dexter's inventions, and then decides to make him go on a scavenger hunt before he can get the piece back. One of the clues told Dexter to look next door, so he goes there and we see him in the kitchen with the neighbor lady. There she offers him cookies, but drops one to the floor. She then goes to retrieve it, and written across her bottom is Dad's trophy. Just take that in for a moment, okay? Obviously, the next clue was for Dexter to go look at his dad's trophy. But we all know that that has a double meaning. Also, how the heck did Dee Dee manage to write that across her bum without her even feeling it? I'm concerned. In our 4th spot, we have the Krusty Krab. This next fact, or whatever you want to call it, has ruined SpongeBob for me. I can never look at the show again the same. So SpongeBob, as we all know, lives in an underwater town called Bikini Bottom. He works at the Krusty Krab. The Krusty Krab in Bikini Bottom. Just think about it, okay? Not only that, but there's also the Chum Bucket. Bikini Bottom has a Krusty Krab and a Chum Bucket. If I have to explain this, then you're too young to be watching this video. The creators really thought they were sly with that one. Coming in at number 3, we have Dexter's assistant. How did we not catch on to this as kids? We were just so young and naive. Okay, in an episode, Dexter gets fed up with Dee Dee and decides to hire a replacement. He then hires a woman named Candy, a very tall and attractive blonde woman who is blessed in the chest area, if you get what I'm saying. At one point, Dexter asked her to dance around. She replies with, "Okay, but it's $50 extra." Also, the fact that they named her Candy? Come on. They made that too obvious. In our 2nd spot, we have the Genius. Here's another dirty reference from SpongeBob. Are we surprised? I'm not. So in the episode titled Texas, Sandy gets homesick and wants to go home. If you guys know, then you know. You're lucky we're keeping that in for you. Patrick and SpongeBob are trying to think of ways to make her feel less homesick. During this conversation, Patrick has a good idea, and SpongeBob says, "Patrick, your genius is showing." Patrick then panics and quickly covers his crotch area. What rhymes with genius? Yeah, you know exactly what he thought SpongeBob was referring to. And in our number 1 spot, we have Rocco's Modern Life. This next hidden message was a little too much, and in the end, it ended up being cut out from the episode. So let's take a look at the episode titled Hut Saw-Raw. In the episode, we see Rocco picking berries from a bush. Upon picking one of the berries, we see a bear run out of the bush, whimpering while holding his crotch, implying that Rocco picked the wrong set of berries, if you know what I mean. Now, this scene did see air, but then it was edited out by Nickelodeon for future broadcasts, and for the Season 2 DVD release. But in Canada, they didn't bother to edit out, and they just let it play with this interesting scene still in it.
Number 10. SpongeBob SquarePants Plankton Paranoia. The king of the meme world, SpongeBob has been on for so long, it has touched so many generations, and now is the granddaddy of the internet in more ways than one. In the episode Plankton Paranoia, we see Mr. Krabs go off the deep end. Again, it's not unusual for the crustaceous business owner to lose it. He's about as stable as Jeffrey Epstein's relationship with the Clintons. In this episode, we really see his his mind unravel like a fruit roll-up. It goes from Mr. Krabs setting new rules in the Krusty Krabs to straight up hallucinations. This level of paranoia makes me think old Eugene Harold Krabs was hitting the crack pipe after closing time. Although this is a kids show and everything is exaggerated, the episode really dives deep into what someone suffering from severe paranoia or schizophrenia might look like. Number 9. Rugrats, Chucky's Wonderful Life. Now we move on to a cartoon that had one of the best opening songs ever. The music went off on that xylophone. It probably lit on fire by the time it was done. But in the episode we see the show take a dark turn. It starts off with Angelica telling Chucky everyone's lives would be better if he was never born. So he packs up all his stuff in a little hobo sack and heads out for the open road. Then he's confronted by his guardian angel to show him what the world would really look like without him, and let me tell you, it's harsh. We start with his dad, who's now single and only lives with sock puppets. I don't think he's getting laid anytime soon. Girls don't usually get hot and heavy over googly eyes glued to fabric. Then we see that Phil and Lil have turned into punks who probably mosh super hard and yell at their mom. And to top it all off, Tommy is homeless and Angelica has packed on some pounds. She looks like Jabba the Hutt's fatter brother. The episode's basically saying you gotta love yourself, man. You're more important than you think. Number 8. My Life as a Teenage Robot, The Return of Raggedy Android. My Life as a Teenage Robot, a show that had it all. The action of Fast and the Furious with all the drama of Degrassi. In the episode Return of Raggedy Android, we see Jenny get kicked out of a diner because the owner doesn't want to serve robots. This has huge undertones of racism. I'm pretty sure the scene takes place in a 50s style diner to really send the message home. Don't forget that most of our grandparents used to be racist. They look all cute and sweet now with their Werther originals, but they used to say racial slurs behind everyone's back. So to avoid this problem, Jenny gets an exosuit that makes her look like a real human girl. But the suit has kinda symbiote properties like the symbiotes from Spider-Man. It has a mind of its own and evil intentions. The exosuit starts to tell Jenny not to save people because that's not what a normal girl would do. Which of course has the underlying message of how women are constantly told to be pretty little things that are nice to look at. So much is going on in this episode. Racism, sexism, Spider-Man ripoffs. I love it. Number 7. SpongeBob Nasty Patty. I'm gonna start off by saying the hidden message in this episode is don't lie, and you should confront your problems as soon as you have them because they'll only build up to be bigger problems if you don't. It starts off with Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob mistaking the health inspector for a criminal, so they basically try to poison him with a rancid Krabby Patty. They think they've killed him, so they try to dispose of the body. The police get involved, and then they have this whole series of comical moments while they're trying to hide the body while also simultaneously dealing with the police. Eventually we learn that the health inspector was alive the whole time and the Krusty Krab has passed its health inspection. But if SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs had confronted the health inspector about their suspicions at the beginning of the episode, none of this would have happened. Number 6. Ren and Stimpy, Stimpy's Fan Club. This show holds the title for taking it too far. It's got sexual themes, violence, disturbing images. All for me? It must be my birthday. In this particular episode, we see Ren have a psychotic breakdown because Stimpy gets more fan mail than him. This leads to Ren contemplating killing Stimpy with his bare hands by snapping his neck. At least he's nice enough to make it quick. The episode is basically touching on how jealousy can drive you crazy. Don't let it get to you. Instead of beating yourself up because someone has things that you don't have, take it easy and be grateful for what you do have. Or kill them in your sleep. Those are really your two options. Number 5. TMNT, Same as It Never Was. In this episode of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, they get attacked and Donatello gets ripped through time. He ends up in a future world where everything is janky as hell. The Turtles' lair looks like a fraternity that had too many White Claws went and sent it through all the furniture. We find out that Master Splinter is dead, all the turtles are jacked up real bad, and Shredder has taken over the world and become the mascot for Shreddies. Everything has fallen apart because Donatello disappeared 30 years ago. Eventually, this leads to an all-out assault on Shredder, with everyone dying except for April O'Neil and Donatello. Then Donatello gets warped back to his original time. The hidden message here is even if you feel like the Donatello in your group, even if you feel like a dork who never brings home the girl and uses a staff as his weapon of choice, you're still very important and you should feel valued. Number 4. Invader Zim, Dark Harvest. One of the darkest shows that ever was on Nickelodeon. The creators deliberately made the show more twisted to push back against the producers. People making something more offensive out of spite? That's my kind of entertainment. Like when everyone was telling Miley Cyrus to be a cute little Disney princess, so she decided to hoe it up for 3 years. By far the best part of the Miley saga. In this episode, we see Zim taking organs from all the kids in an attempt to be more human. This could be the creators trying to comment on how people consume themselves with material possessions in order to feel more complete. But in the end, you just have an empty hole in your heart. It doesn't matter how many live, laugh, love signs you buy, Nance. It's not gonna save your marriage. Or maybe this is just an episode about an alien eating kids. Who knows? Number 3. Kids Next Door. Operation Future. They're kids, they're spies, I love it. In the episode Operation Future, number 4 gets sent to a boarding school and soon finds out it's an all-girl boarding school, and then finds out the person running the school is secretly trying to turn all the boys in the world into girls. Wow, times have changed. Could you imagine a kids show today where they tried to change kids' genders against their will? The backlash would be insane. Both the left and the right would be sending off hateful tweets faster than that short guy who got owned in New York.
Go ahead and attack me! Oh my god.
The episode also has some pretty dated views on boys and girls, with the hidden message being that all boys are dirty and rough and all girls are soft and like pink stuff. Number 2. Legend of Korra. Venom of the Red Lotus. The whole Avatar series is incredible, and going beyond that, the show is constantly touching on themes of racism, elitism, and tragedies of war. This episode in particular pushes the boundaries. Korra is kidnapped by the Red Lotus cult and tortured by them bending mercury into her body. She eventually escapes and the mercury is taken out, but the whole experience leaves her very traumatized and damaged, like every girl I've ever dated. And she's rough after this. Not like rough after you do too many Jaeger bombs, you wake up the next morning and you're so hungover that sound hurts your feelings. She needs real rehab and has PTSD. The episode touches on some of the real effects that trauma can have on a person, and the episodes after show how long it can take for someone to recover from a traumatic event. Number 1 on our list is Pokemon Sun and Moon. One journey ends, another begins. Okay guys, get ready for some feels. In this episode, Ash and Pikachu come across a Lin that is living under a bridge with an old and weak Stalin. Ash tries to save the older Stalin by taking it to a Poke Center, but eventually it escapes and returns to under the bridge to be with the Lin. Throughout the episode, we see the Stalin get weaker and weaker until eventually it passes away and leaves the Lin all on its own. The Lin goes through a bit of a depression, refusing to eat and refusing to leave the spot where the Stalin died. Eventually we have a rainy night followed by a sunny morning, and in the clouds we see a cloud that looks like Stalin. Straight up Lion King. Remember. This gives the Lin the motivation it needs to keep on going. This episode will definitely hit hard for anyone who has ever said goodbye to a pet.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Courage the Cowardly Dog. We are starting this list off with intention today because I feel like this is one of the most widely feared children's cartoons ever. Courage the Cowardly Dog is an absolutely iconic cartoon that I can vividly remember absolutely terrifying me as a child. The show is basically just about Courage, who is a dog with human-like characteristics, and his elderly owners. The three all live in the middle of nowhere, and each episode they are thrown into different insane, bizarre, and usually really disturbing situations that they have to get out of. The show is known for its extremely eerie and creepy atmosphere and the energy that the show gives off. Contrary to the name, Courage is a dog who is very easily frightened. He was abandoned when he was a puppy after his parents were sent into outer space, and this is when the very friendly Muriel found him and took him in. Muriel, however, is married to the grumpy, mean, and greedy Eustace, who is often quite rude to Courage. Despite being terrified, Courage always finds a way to face his fears in order to protect his owners, and I think that is something that we can all appreciate. All in all, Courage the Cowardly Dog is a fantastic cartoon, but it is most definitely very surreal and pretty unbelievable at times. In our number 9 spot today, we have The Kitchen Casanova. The Kitchen Casanova was made in 1996 and was a part of of Cartoon Network's What a Cartoon series. Basically, it was about a guy who is trying to prepare dinner for his date, but he is exceptionally nervous, and of course Murphy's Law would have it that everything is going wrong. This cartoon was actually eventually pulled from air because of the fact that at one point he accidentally slices off one of his fingers and blood goes spurting everywhere, which probably isn't an ideal image for children, but I honestly don't even think that was the worst part. In the end, when the date arrives and he reveals the big meal he made, it's actually just the grossest and creepiest looking thing ever, and it had me feeling very glad that I was only watching a cartoon. The dinner has eyeballs, bloody bones, a severed human foot, and a rolled up tongue that unfortunately unrolls, and then twitches before being covered up again. Okay, so it's a pile of gross, really not food, and I could get past that except for the fact that they actually eat it. I just hate that so much. Why did they have to? All in all, the whole thing is just very bizarre, and the ending leaves you with a really uncomfortable feeling. In our number 8 spot today, we have The Cameraman's Revenge. The Cameraman's Revenge comes all the way from 1912, and it is unlike anything I have ever seen before, which after watching it I feel pretty incredibly grateful for. Basically, the whole show is just a bunch of bugs, and I just want to start off by making it clear that these are very real dead bugs that are being used as puppets, okay? Nightmare fuel enough. That's too much. That little tidbit is enough to make me say no thank you, but if that's not enough to deter you, surely the strange plot will. Basically, Mr. Beetle is out on town and looking for some companionship when he sees a very beautiful lady dragonfly who he flirts with. Unbeknownst to Mr. Beetle, the dragonfly's ex-boyfriend, a grasshopper who is a cameraman, sees this whole thing going down and is very jealous. Well, as it turns out, Mr. Beetle has a Mrs. Beetle who hears about this infidelity from the grasshopper, but as it turns out, she is having her own kind of adulterous experience. You really have to see this one to believe it. It's a bunch of, it's just a bunch of unfaithful bugs. I don't know, and it's stop motion of dead bugs, which just makes it something I'll really never forget. But man, I wish I could. I really do. In our number 7 spot today, we have Sunshine. Sunshine, or Little Sun, is a show from Czechoslovakia that ran from 1979 until 1989, and unfortunately it's actually pretty hard to find most of the episodes that aired. There were different segments in the show and different characters, and while most of it was fairly normal for the 1980s, there's just one character in this show that is well known for just being extremely creepy. He's not exactly a cartoon, but he is a puppet, and I just had to include him. The character's name is Radifak Plachta, which translates to something like Big Nose Blanket. The character is made up of 2 men under a blanket, and he has a super long neck. He has an absolutely terrifying voice that honestly would be suitable for a serial killer instead of a children's TV show, and the TV station that ran this show had been called Avant-Garde for not being afraid to show a puppet that isn't pretty, but I don't think not pretty is the best way to put it. I think downright terrifying is a far more accurate description of this guy. It's so creepy, but it's so 1980s. In our number 6 spot today, we have Cat Dog. Cat Dog is actually a cartoon I can remember watching when I was a kid, and I do remember it scaring the heck out of me. Maybe I was just easily scared, but I don't think so. Cat Dog is half cat, half dog creature that gets itself into situations and has quite the time figuring everything out, considering the whole cat half and dog half can't seem to get along with each other. This is already a weird premise, but it's not even the strangest part of the show. There is an episode when Cat wants to brush Dog's teeth, and he crawls into his own mouth and travels through its own body to get to the dog side, where it then comes out of Dog's mouth. So now, Cat is hanging out of Dog's mouth, inside out, veins and muscles and everything we never want to see exposed. I know this was probably meant to just be a silly little thing, but it's scary. I don't know, man. It's a lot for me to process. I can't even imagine a child. Maybe I'm looking into it a little too much, but like, I don't know. There's just a weird vibe going on here. I don't like it. No thank you. In our number 5 spot today, we have Frothy Dog. Moving on from Cat Dog to Frothy Dog, alright? Frothy Dog was a part of Cartoon Network's Cartoons That Never Made It. You'll soon find out why. This series of shorts were small little cartoons that would play sometimes before commercials, or they would be put in somewhere to break up a longer running show, and the whole point of them were that they were supposed to be these little snippets or promos for cartoons that didn't ever get fleshed out into full shows, for very obvious reasons. Frothy Dog is the show that never was, and it is about exactly what you were most likely assuming it is about, which is a dog with rabies. The short features a pretty upbeat tune, so it's not necessarily scary, but it's very very disturbing. Some of the lyrics are things like, "You can look, but you shouldn't touch, or else he'll gnaw your arm off." Okay, not exactly a nice ring. Or another part where they explain that Frothy is always smiling because he has lockjaw. Alright, I can't believe this is real. At the end of the day, I feel extremely grateful that this is one that never made it into a full series, because I just don't think anyone really needs a frothy dog in their life, and I stand by that. In our number 4 spot today, we have Happy Tree Friends. Happy Tree Friends is absolutely not a show I would ever show to a child for many reasons, okay? Just get that out there. I think that's important to start off with. This show is an adult cartoon that is disguised like a kid's show. If you just saw the characters, you would have no idea what dark things really happen, because all of the characters are cute little forest animals, and the animation is very bright and very colorful, but this show is actually pretty horrifying. Each episode shows these cute little forest animals getting into extremely violent and graphic situations. Sometimes it is through accidents, and sometimes it is absolutely deliberate, and the violence ranges from smaller injuries and pain to some pretty full-blown gruesome activity. Most of the characters who die in the show do find themselves reincarnated for the next episode though, so I guess that's a plus. I'm just trying to find the bright side here, you know, glass half full. In our number 3 spot today, we have Ghostly Thrillers. Ghostly Thrillers is a creepy little animated movie that features 2 stories. One being The Youth Who Wanted to Shiver, which is about a boy who isn't afraid of anything, so he sets out on an adventure to learn how to shiver in fear. But it's the other part of this film, called Ghost in the Shed, that I really want to talk about today. Ghost in the Shed starts off with a traveling salesman who unfortunately knocks on the wrong door one day. He knocks on a farmer's door just before dusk and asks if he can spend the night. The farmer and his sons are more than happy to have him stay, because they actually just end up killing and robbing him before the sun comes up the next day. After this, they buried his body underneath the shed in the back, and no one ever suspected a thing. Flash forward quite a few years, and the area has become more populated, and a new family lives in the house now. This new family obviously doesn't know about the body buried in the back, and they're actually good people and not killers. The salesman's spirit, of course, has been lingering around, and he won't move on to the other side until he gets someone to find his body so that people can know what happened to him. Basically, the rest of the film is just the salesman haunting this family until they finally dig up the backyard and find his skeleton, and honestly, the whole concept is just not something I would have assumed would be for children. I feel like there are real adult horror movies with the exact same plot, so this might just be one to skip over for the kids. In our number 2 spot today, we have Feline Follies. Feline Follies was created in 1919 and was the first time we got to see the character of Felix the cat. This cartoon shows Felix, who is called Master Tom at this point, meeting a female white cat. Felix serenades her and they fall in lust with each other, and Felix says that he will devote all 9 of his lives to her. How romantic. He even sings so loud he wakes up an entire neighborhood. While this is all going on, a group of mice have broken into Felix's home and basically just trashed it. When Felix's owner comes home and sees the mess, she blames Felix and ends up throwing him out of the house. This is when Felix decides that he will go and live with his new lady cat friend. To Felix's surprise, he now realizes that he is the father to an entire litter of kittens. At this point, you might be asking yourself how this cartoon is dark and how it could have possibly made it this high on the list. Well, it is how this one ends that really gets you. Felix obviously wasn't ready for the consequence of his actions, because once he sees all of his little kitten children, his reaction is to run away. He runs towards the local gas house where he lays down and sticks a hose in his mouth and turns it on. So basically, he just takes his own life by intentionally inhaling coal gas. Definitely not how I thought this one was gonna turn out, and what a questionable storyline for a children's cartoon overall. What were people thinking, man? In our number 1 spot today, we have The Devil's Ball, or The Mascot. This stop-motion animated short comes from 1933 and is honestly quite a ride, and a mix between fascinating and terrifying. Basically, it starts off fairly normal and fine, with a stuffed dog named Duffy coming to life and then heading out on an adventure for an orange, but this isn't what we are here to talk about today. Once midnight strikes, the devil comes out of a liquor bottle, and this is when things really start to get crazy. So basically now the devil is holding some kind of soiree, and things such as different creatures, vegetables, old garbage, it all begins to come to life and displaying human characteristics, and these are the guests of the ball. Over the course of the ball, we see some pretty spooky things, like when the devil tries to convince one of the guests to stab someone. Duffy is kind of the saving grace grace of this whole thing because Duffy is actually cute and basically the only creature in this whole thing that isn't absolutely terrifying. All in all, the whole thing was originally 40 minutes, but it is tough to find that version, and most you will find now are a 25-minute cut. It certainly is worth a watch, but I wouldn't necessarily show this one to any children unless you want them to be scarred for life.
And at number 10, we have The Iron Giant and the very, very strong anti-gun messages. The Iron Giant is a 1999 American sci-fi film by Ted Hughes, set during the Cold War in 1957. The Iron Giant is about a boy called Hogarth who discovers a big robot who fell from space. Befriending the robot, Hogarth needs to stop the US Army and federal agents from finding him. Children may not be too clued up as to the overtones of the film, but for adults it's easy enough to see that the movie is very much anti-gun. Obviously, America is pretty divided when it comes to the Second Amendment, so some considered the film to be quite provocative, including the Washington Post, who said, "The movie, as beautifully drawn and sleek and engaging as it is, has the annoyance of incredible smugness." In at number 9, we have Finding Nemo and the animals good, people bad message. Ever noticed how the humans in Finding Nemo are awful? Well, that's not by accident. Disney Pixar's 2006 smash hit success Finding Nemo pretty much paints the message that humans do not treat animals well. Scuba divers capture Nemo, then he has to live in the awful Dr. Sherman's office fish tank and be visited by the catastrophic Darla. Of course, there is the classic line that all drains lead to the ocean, which is a less than subtle poke at humans for dumping their waste in the sea. In at number 8, we have the Tiny Toons message that drinking is bad, and you'll probably die. So this one's really awkward. Tiny Toons was a much loved cartoon in the 90s, but one episode actually was way off the mark and has since been banned. An episode called One Beer was supposed to teach kids that underage drinking is bad, but instead had the potential to mentally scar them. In One Beer, 3 characters get drunk off one beer, steal a police car, drive it off a cliff and die. Yes, die. Luckily the episode has been banned, but still, I mean, kids are gonna be like staying well off that beer. In at number 7, we have WALL-E and the environmental and technological warning message. Disney Pixar's 2008 fantastic movie WALL-E has the same director as Finding Nemo, who also wrote the screenplay. Something tells me that Andrew Stanton is pretty concerned that humans are gonna destroy the planet. Set just under 800 years from now, WALL-E is a garbage compressing robot tasked with cleaning our trashed planet Earth. No prizes for guessing that the film is teaching children to look after their environment. If not, this could well be our future. You will also note that all of the humans in the film are fat, taking a swipe at our lazy culture and our capability to become dependent on technology instead of doing things for ourselves. In at number 6, we have the Lego Movie and the strong anti-capitalism vibe. I mean, the antagonist is called Lord Business, so I think it's pretty clear how the writers feel about capitalist culture. Lord Business is the evil overlord of a big corporation called the Octan, which seems friendly on the outside but is actually run by a robot army and is financing a police state. This is all very 1984, with posters of Lord Business propaganda popping up all over Bricksburg. Lego Emmett proclaims Octan Corporation produces all music, coffee, dairy, television shows, surveillance cameras, history books, and voting machines, aka kids don't buy into big brands like McDonald's and Coca-Cola because they're corrupt and they want to control your mind. And all hail the proletariat worker Emmett. In at number 5, we have Cars 2 and the very strong oil companies are bad message. Cars 2 is pretty anti-oil, ironic for a movie about vehicles that rely on them. Evil corrupt lemon cars want to maximize oil profits and will do anything to sabotage the Grand Prix, which has opted to use a sustainable energy source. It's pretty easy to read between those lines. Oil bad, renewable energy good. Director John Lasseter even admitted the underlying message of the movie in a Wall Street Journal interview. He said that they crafted the bad guy story to be oil versus alternative fuel. Okay, so this next one may not be an official hidden message, but is a pretty strong and interesting theory that keeps on circulating around the internet. In at number 4, remember the Rugrats? Well, some people think that the writers were trying to tell us that the kids were all dead and were a figment of alive Angelica's unstable mind. Weird, right? But actually, on a rewatch, it seems kind of plausible. The theory goes that Angelica's mother and her brother Tommy died in some kind of accident. That is why Angelica has a doll that she styles to kind of look like her mum, who apparently was on drugs at some point. Who knows? Her dad Stu deals with the loss by constantly making toys in the basement for his son that will never get the chance to play with them. Chucky and his mum also died, which apparently explains Chaz's neurotic character. The DeVilles aborted a child that Angelica couldn't figure out the gender of, and that's why they're all twins. The plot thickens in All Grown Up, as theorists say the show is consistent with Angelica turning to drugs to deal with her mental state. I don't know about this one. In at number 3, we have Who Framed Roger Rabbit and the strong themes of segregation. Set in LA in 1947, Who Framed Roger Rabbit is a 1988 movie about cartoons and humans living alongside one another. In 1947 in real life LA, there were huge racial divides and tensions, and this seems to be the case in the movie if you look a little deeper. The cartoons are portrayed as something for the humans' entertainment, and their Toontown is under threat of demolition. Gentrification station. Toons are consistently stereotyped, and indeed, human-only bars exist. Toons can perform, but they cannot be audience members. The book the film is based on, Who Censored Roger Rabbit, makes things even more apparent. I feel like the overarching messages play nicely, guys. In at number 2, one of my favorite movies and stories of all time, we have The Wizard of Oz, which is actually an analogy for 1890s America. L. Frank Baum's The Wizard of Oz is a thinly veiled allegory for late 19th century America. The Scarecrow represents the poor Midwestern farmers and Dorothy the American public. Dorothy walks on the yellow brick road representing the gold bars of money to see a wizard, a banker, in Emerald City, which is green to symbolize money and the American capitalist dream. In the end, Dorothy decides that life over the rainbow isn't for her, instead preferring the comforts of home. Baum exposes the banks as corrupt, the American dream as flawed, and suggests that the simple life is a path best followed. Here we are at number 1 of our hidden messages in children's stories, and I don't even know what to make of this. We have Alice in Wonderland. I mean, there are many weird messages in Alice in Wonderland, and who knows what truly all of them mean. One thing is for sure though, it isn't just about a girl who falls down a hole. Many say Alice in Wonderland is a coming of age story with a young Alice going through puberty and learning to accept her body as it changes. Others read some pretty undeniable drug and alcohol messages in the story. Alice has a bite of a magic mushroom, she eats an Eat Me cookie that has some pretty freaky side effects, and she runs into an undeniably high caterpillar smoking what could be either crack or marijuana. To be honest, I feel like we could sit here and try and interpret Alice in Wonderland for days. Most of it probably goes over children's heads.